my honored leader of opposition for his excellent opening remarks and constructive. I'd also like to thank the members of government for their remarks, especially the Prime Minister and his excellent interest in this matter. All right, as a quick roadmap, I'm going to start off by talking about the opposition points. And, I want to hit the points that they made that testing is unreliable, and discrimination. I'll actually hit that one as well, and probably also touch on the interviews. Then after that, I want to make two major points in addition to the leader of opposition's points, being that aside from the point that numbers don't lie, we also want to make the points that standardized tests can be used as a method of administering equality to people. And I'll talk about that more in depth on there, and also about the importance of metrics in society and how standardized testing is a way of creating an administrative metric that can be used by organizations, persons, administrators, whoever, for embetterment, for better use of investment or whatnot. Anyway, so that's my quick roadmap there. Okay, starting off, the government argues that these tests are unreliable, and they cite many anecdotal situations which we are naturally inclined to agree with, because as humans we like a good story, and they told many good stories. I must applaud them for that. But the point is that statistically the tests work. They correlate very strongly with academic performance in school and with academic performance afterwards. While there is deviation, and in some cases hilariously absurd deviation, there is also a general mean tendency that how well you do is how well you do. Like, you do well in high school, you do well in the standardized test, you do well in college, or you do poorly, poorly, poorly. When you do really well in the standardized test and then abysmally everywhere else, that's just, that's an outlier, but that is not the actual case. That is not the standard. I want to emphasize that. All right, so tests discriminate. You say that preparation is key in performing well on tests. I'd like to remind the government that preparation is key for almost everything you will ever do. If a good friend of mine always likes to say to me, failure to plan is planning to fail, and likewise, failure to prepare is a preparation for failure. That without preparation you can't achieve anything, and so in that way any preparation that you might make for a test would be resembling natural preparations you'd have to make in life. And while yes, some of these preparations do have dollar signs attached to them, and it's very unfortunate they do, standardized tests are actually designed to avoid that kind of preparation. And so yes?
Did we not mention that we don't really... We're saying that the problem preparation here is that poor students do not have the access to the preparatory materials, and that is why it is discriminatory.
Well, we feel that the preparations that are made are not of statistical significance. They don't actually produce a very large push in someone's SAT scores. And while, they may provide a bump, the SATs are constantly being redesigned. They are, in fact, being changed over time so as to evade the efforts of those who try to teach the test. Yes?
The SATs, sure, they're changed over time slightly, but would you argue that there's that much of a difference between this year and 5 years? People can take SAT practice tests are exactly the same. That's a real test with different words.
The tests are changed over time, and the thing that is common between them, the thing that makes them standardized, is the way in which they're graded. And they're graded on a basis of standard deviation. The idea that you can take of any population and then fit them to a bell curve, and the test is designed to administer that. And so the SATs, year after year, they are recurved. Every year there's a new curve created, and this curve is very consistent because the population itself is consistent. Population itself always has the same comparative intelligence, and so they use this curve then to construct it, and that is the key similarity in the test, in any standardized test, is applying this curve. And so the measurement is more of population than it is of ability. All right. Also, you talked about replacing with team-based interviews. We feel that standardized tests are an excellent supplement to everything we already do to grade a person. We look at their performance, which you look at your academic performance, which has an enormously strong correlation with your the number of dollar signs on your home. That if you think that people who have wealthy parents, backgrounds, that sort of thing, those students tend to do better by like 30–40% over students with poor backgrounds. Whereas on an SAT, the percentage difference in terms of your grade ends up being much smaller. When you've taken that preparation material, when you've gotten that material, that gives your grade, you know, a 20–30 point boost on a 1,600 point test. Whereas when you have rich parents and you go to a public school versus you have poor parents, you go to a public school, the people with the rich parents tend to be getting the A's in the honors classes. So that's basically like, you know, a level above that. I don't know what what above an A would be, but you know, that's a level above that. Whereas the people in the poor groups are getting D's in slowed down classes. The point is that money has a direct correspondence to how well you perform academically, and it's a much stronger correspondence than how well you perform on a standardized test. Okay. Also, a member of the government mentioned that the standardized tests will be used by employers and they'll be misinterpreted, that they'll be read too strongly, and the employers will get too strong a feeling. And we feel that this is not true, and that further, over time, as this is applied more frequently and it's better integrated into our lifestyle, we become more accustomed to reading these grades and to understanding what they mean. And that at start, we won't really know what they'll do. And employers, if they are unsure of what this test means in terms of the score, they will default away from it and not towards it. They will not judge someone based on something they do not understand, but they will only judge someone based on something which they have seen have consistent result. So if they, as an employer, see that people with high test scores are excellent employees, then they will in fact use that in their hiring process. Otherwise, they will probably disregard it, as is human nature, to disregard that which they don't understand or can't use effectively, which would be, you know, test scores they don't associate with properly. All right, so we'd like to say that, but over time it becomes a metric, that thanks to this standard deviation curve that they use, we're able to get a very accurate metric on society, able to understand very well how people, group amongst each other. All right, quickly, our points here. Some major impacts that come about from SAT scores. Equality. Funding in this country for our public schools is horrifically unequal, and this has to do with the fact that funding is based on property tax values by district. It's done by school districts, smaller than county even. So very, very small, like neighborhoods. Different neighborhoods have different schools and with completely different funding systems. So it very easily favors poor schools and rich schools, where, you know, people move to rich neighborhoods to go to the school there, and that school's land value then goes up. And the direct correlation creates an effect that builds over time. And so we've seen in neighborhoods across the country a phenomenon where land value spikes wherever a school district line is drawn. And on one side, the land value is much higher than the other side because of the school that you get to put your kids through. And because of that, it creates a reinforcing effect which will tend to favor richness. All right, also, and all right, that covers everything. We thank you for hearing our arguments.